Franklin County is almost twice the number of Benton County in terms of fail to appear. Why?
I think it's because of our population. We have a high Hispanic population and that are mobile as well. They move a lot. That's the main reason, I believe.
Well, it seems to me that some people could end up losing their job if they go to jury duty.
Well, that's true. We actually had a juror last week on a trial who worked at Energy Northwest, and they told him if he showed up for jury duty, he would lose his job.
No.
Yes.
And that is, I don't know the specific RCW, but against the law. Employers are required to allow their employees to serve on jury duty.
Right.
They're not required to pay them, but they're required to allow them to serve on jury duty.
Yes.
Well, that really surprises me because I would think that one of our community's major employers would see that as a great civic
Yes.
responsibility to participate in this.
We were very surprised, and the judge on that trial actually wrote a letter to the legal department at Energy Northwest.
So the person didn't serve on the jury.
No, he did show up.
He did show okay.
up. And then he expressed that he would lose his job if he was put on a trial.
Oh, okay, all right, so then he was dismissed. Thank you.
Yes.
That's really, really, that's interesting. If somebody from Energy Northwest is listening, give us a call. We'd like to hear more about that. Or other employers who would not allow an employee to serve on a jury. But, you know, jury duty can last anywhere from like a half a day to a couple weeks, can it?
Right.
I mean, and it's just like the toss of a coin as to where you might end up.
It depends on the case type and the type of, if it's a felony, those usually last longer. But in Franklin County, our typical jury week looks, 1 to 3 days at the most for a trial.
1 to 3 days, unless it's a big case.
Right,
Or, yeah.
high profile case.
Mhm.
And it has to be random by statute. It has to be a
Yeah.
completely random selection. So when you show up, for example, in Benton County, some of the early jurors are automatically sent to district court cases if we have district court. But the rest of them are then just randomly selected for whatever trials we have left over in Superior Court. And yes, I mean, like a recent case that we had lasted for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of unusual, but still, I mean, you could get the luck of the draw on that. I mean, I think it's lucky because then you get to see the process, which I think is quite fascinating, but other people might not be working part-time like I am, so they don't have that kind of
Right.
flexibility. Yeah, let me remind you of our phone number, 547-8726, and we do have a caller, so let's go ahead and add that person to our conversation today. Hi, how you doing? Hi, you're on the air.
Well, I appreciate that very much, sir. We do try to work with our prospective jurors because we know they do, have busy lives, and just give us a call and we'll try to work with you. But I appreciate you calling in.
That is a nice comment. Basically, you're public servants,
Yes.
so it's nice to hear good things
It
every
is.
once in a while. I'll tell you what, we have got to take a break right here. But when we come back, I want both Josie and Michael to share some of the really interesting things people write down on their jury information sheet about why they can't serve. It's great. Stay with us. We're talking about juries today. We've got Josie Delvin and Michael Killian. They are both county clerks. That's an elected position in both Franklin and Benton County. So, Josie, let's start with you. Give us some. What are the general kinds of things that people use to get out of jury duty? And they're not always successful with these, but they do use them, right?
Right, they do, and most of the time they're not successful unless they, of course, include a doctor's note. A lot of the excuses are too much information for us about some medical circumstances. Comes to mind, chronic diarrhea is one that we see often on a
Oh,
jury
dear.
summons. So,
Yeah.
We really don't need to know the details, but if you have a physician's excuse to be excused from jury duty, then we certainly do that.
Mhm.
And that can be permanently or just for that one term.
Oh, I see. So it could
Correct.
go on your record, like, don't ever call this person.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, they have a chronic problem.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, what else?
Generally, we get some not so nice responses about law enforcement, the criminal justice system as a whole. Some of them are, they cuss at us. And I'd like to remind everybody that your jury summons and what you write on there is public record. So anybody who asks for them can see a certain portion of them, and that's included in that jury summons.
Oh, my gosh.
One in particular, this individual states that they are retired and they like to have their beer around noon, and they generally drink from 12 to 3 because it calms their nerves, and then they'll need a couple of brews at 2. So we don't provide beer for jurors.
Oh, my gosh. That's, do you think that sometimes people do that just to add humor to the situation, or they're really thinking, hey, this is going to get me out?
I think that people really think that that's going to get them out
Right.
of jury duty.
Oh, dear.
Especially
Okay.
some of the things that they say about being prejudice,
We get a lot of that.
yes,
A lot of
hating
that.
certain individuals
Ethnic
with
groups.
ethnic groups.
Mhm.
Anyone who is going before a jury trial is guilty, so hang them anyway. So they think that that's going to get them off of jury duty, and it does not.
Hmm.
Mhm.
What legitimately does get people off jury duty?
Well, if you have a true medical issue that could be permanent, again, individuals that are developmentally disabled that can't serve on jury duty, that will get you off. If you're a caregiver for an individual, that gets you excused. If you're if it's a financial hardship on you, if like long haul truck drivers are not here very often, so we will generally try to work with them on a time that they're here. College students,
Mhm.
we'll ask them to defer to the summer months when they're actually here in the county.
Mm-hmm.
Mothers that are breastfeeding are allowed a deferral 2 times, so they can be deferred for a full 2 years until that child is not breastfeeding any longer, and if they
Mhm.
are, then they need a judge's excuse.
You were telling me earlier that people show up in their pajamas,
Yes, they do.
and they
Yes.
think that that's going to get them an automatic boot.
They believe that once they show up in their pajamas for jury duty, that we're going to send them home, and instead we don't. We send them to the courtroom, and they have to explain to the judge why they appeared in their pajamas.
Or
Wow.
short shorts or tank tops and those
Oh,
type of things,
wow.
right?
Yes, yes. You should wear proper attire when
Yes.
you show up for jury duty, but we're still going to send you to the courtroom.
You know what's interesting is that I was in the Justice Center, not courthouse, but Justice Center the other day to talk to you, Josie, and I was like amazed at there is a place in the Tri-Cities where men still wear complete suits, and the weather was like over 100 degrees, and I'm wow, that is interesting.
Yeah, that's the supposed to be the courtroom decorum. You're supposed to dress
Mhm.
appropriately. If you're a party to a case in the courtroom, you're supposed to have proper attire. And for attorneys, ties and long sleeve shirts and sometimes jackets are required.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the dress code.
Yeah, but not for jurors.
No.
Not for jurors,
Not,
no.
not that dressed up. but-
No.
Okay. What about, childcare is a problem. I mean, it is a legitimate problem. So what do you do about that? And I know you were telling me that sometimes people show up with their children.
Yes, actually, when the Sisavon case was going, I had a juror show up with her baby, and I sent her to the courtroom, and she had to explain to the judge why she brought her child with her. If people have childcare difficulties, we work with them as much as we can. If they need a permanent excusal, that cannot come from the clerk, that has to come from a judge. So if I get individuals who have been deferred for 2 years and want to continue to be deferred, I tell them to write me a letter and I'll take it to a judge, and the judge can make the determination if they're going to excuse them further.
Yeah. So let's say that someone has been selected for they don't necessarily know the case, but they've been moved now to the next level of you're going to sit and you will be examined by the attorneys or whatever to see whether or not you're going to sit on that case. Are there certain cases that people try to get out of?
Oh, most definitely. I think the worst ones are homicides, of course. Most people don't want to sit on a homicide case, or any cases involving children. If
Or
it's-
rape cases are really
Right, rape.
difficult for a lot of people to sit on.
Rape cases,
Mhm.
child molestation cases,
Right.
but of course, when they report for jury duty, they don't know what case they're going to be potentially selected for. So they don't have any idea until they get into the courtroom and the judge explains to them prior to the voir dire process what the case is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ooh, so those are a lot more difficult
They
to
are.
actually seat a jury on that.
Yes. So in those cases, we call in a higher number of jurors, not only to cover that 25% no-show rate, but also because we believe that we're going to lose jurors in that process that just simply don't have the ability to sit on a case like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because typically there's a special question there that they're filling out as well, and that asks specific questions relating to the case, and then the judge will speak and the attorneys will speak to that prospective juror in chambers
Mm-hmm.
and possibly excuse them at that time.
Yeah. So I would imagine that this is where people also use some of their excuses, some particularly against law enforcement or minority groups or whatever.
That doesn't
People-
usually happen in the
No.
courtroom, but it'll
No,
happen
does it?
in
Oh.
chambers. No, they
Oh,
won't,
in
they won't
chambers.
say those things publicly.
No, they will not. So even if it's an individual that filled out their jury summons and made those comments, if they do get selected and go into the courtroom, they do not say those things to the judge or to the parties in the case.
Mm-hmm. Why? What do you mean?
I think it's easier to put it in writing than
Right.
it is to say it to someone's face.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Well, where does the list come from that you even draw on? Where, where are these names?
So the names are drawn from Washington State driver's license, ID card holders, and voter registration. And then that list is merged at the state level, and each county receives their list on a disc, and then it's loaded into our jury system.
So you don't have to be a U.S. citizen or have a green card or
Well, you do. That's,
to get a driver's license?
oh, no, not to get a driver's license or an ID
Well,
card.
you're on that list.
You're on the list, but then that's part of the qualifications of a juror
Oh,
to
I
be a
see.
U.S. citizen and be able to speak and understand the English language.
Oh, a lot of people who are not here with documentation can speak the language.
Correct, but they're not a citizen possibly.
right.
So that's one of the qualifications that they have to fall under.
Hmm. Okay.
And then individuals that are convicted felons could
Right.
also be on that list, but then be kicked off the list unless you have your rights restored.
Mm-hmm.
By a court of record.
You know, most of us get our information about what juries, what happens in the courtroom and our legal system and everything because we watch television. Law and Order, love that show. And all kinds of movies and things, particularly about juries. Is it really like that?
No.
It's not all glamour, that's for sure.
No, I don't know if there's any glamour.
Well,
I think this is as glamorous as we get
Right.
right here.
right here? Oh my gosh, you're in trouble then. Well, you know what I find interesting, just the few times that I've been in the courtroom, is that it's usually incredibly boring. It's boring. You really have to pay attention.
You do.
Yes, you do.
And that's a very important part of being a juror is to pay attention in the courtroom.
What
Someone's
kinds of
life's at stake.
Yeah. What kinds of instructions are jurors given about? Can they take notes?
Yes.
Okay.
can take notes
They're
now.
allowed to take notes.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
That was a change.
That was a change about 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So when does the judge, I don't mean the end of the trial when people go off to deliberate, but is there a process before that, like maybe when the jury's been seated, instructions to the jury about what their responsibility is?
Before you even start the voir dire process where they're going through and questioning them, they tell them, they instruct them on a few things, but then once a jury is actually seated and sworn in, they'll instruct them not to, again, not to read any newspapers, not to do any research on your own, don't visit the site if it was an accident. So
Don't
then-
go on the internet. Don't use your
Right.
cell phones.
Right.
You know, for looking up information.
Oh, man.
Because you had a trial that
That's
was a
difficult.
mistrial not too long ago
Yes.
because of that.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And that was, I know, it was a mistrial, and that again then cost the county money because then we have to reseat another another jury panel, because none of the jurors, when they were questioned, admitted to being the person that posted on this blog site. And after the fact, the juror came in and admitted that they were the person that did it. And the judge said, if you had told us when we were questioning everybody, we could have excused you and gone on with the trial, but because you didn't, we had to cause a mistrial, and now we have to seat a whole nother jury panel.
Wow.
Yeah, very expensive.
Very expensive, yeah, yeah. So it's bad enough to go and read or listen to things via the internet or, you know, whatever you might do, but to blog about it?
Right.
Right.
That's like really extra over the line. So we got to take another break here, and we'll be back because I want to ask both Josie and Michael what jurors have to say about the process once it's over. We'll be back in a moment. Oh boy, we're talking about jury duty today, and we've got the two county clerks in our studio, Josie Delvin and Michael Killian. So when, and we do get successful juries. I don't want people to think that we don't actually have a jury process here, because we do. We're seating juries all the time in the Tri-Cities area. So once it's over for a juror, what do they say to you?
You know, generally, we don't get to see the jurors, but the judges, the prosecutor, the bailiffs, and sometimes my staff will go in after have rendered their decision, and generally, they're surprised that they were so engaged in the process. They are surprised about the process, how well it works, but it's very difficult for them just to make a decision that they know affects someone's life. So they do take it very seriously. But they are surprised at how difficult the process is and how diligent everyone is in trying to keep our jurors not only segregated but happy.
And taken care of.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
And since I've been the clerk, I've had a lot of people come back and say, you know, we really love the process. This was probably the most important thing we've done in our lives, is sitting on a jury and rendering a verdict on somebody. So they really appreciated the whole process.
Yeah. How many times do we have a group of people who can't come to a decision? Does it happen?
Well, we had a hung jury last week. They
Okay.
deliberated for 2 days. I think they asked, about 15 questions back to all the parties, and at the end of the day, they couldn't reach a decision.
Mhm.
So then the prosecutor has to make the decision, does he want to retry that case again? Is it worth it, you know, based on all the outcomes?
Mhm.
And our most recent trial that we had ended in a mistrial over a year ago when it was retried.
Mhm.
And the jury reached a verdict on this one.
And that was 2 weeks, or was that a week and a
Yes.
half?
Well, we selected the jurors, so it took 2 days to select the jurors and then sent them home and then started the following week on Monday.
Mhm.
And then they came back and worked that week and then the following week through Tuesday.
Yeah. So you're feeling that for the most part, people take this really seriously?
I do.
I do.
I believe they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. I mean, it's our American system. If we didn't have those jurors, the system would collapse.
Mhm. Josie, I know you've done a lot of traveling. I don't know about you, Michael. What have you observed in other countries? Because I'm sure you go and want to, you know, learn about what you do for a living someplace else. What have you seen?
I do. It's very interesting. You know, people are very critical of our criminal justice system, and it's not perfect by any means. Nothing is. But it's the best system I've seen. I mean, I've traveled to South Africa, to Peru, even to England, and I was fortunate enough to get into Old Bailey, which is not open to the public. You have to have an appointment to get into the courthouse in England. It's not, you just walk in. So I was fortunate that I got to see the clerk of the court there, and he took me around to the courtrooms. There was actually an IRA member on trial when I was there. So our system is so very open, and the attempts that are made to keep it without any corruption, like Peru, it depends on how much you can pay the judge, because the judge makes the determination, sometimes even without a trial. Now, they've attempted to convert to the American system, and I think they're having a difficult time with that, but I feel very fortunate that we live in the United States and that you can have a jury of your peers, and it's just amazing when you get to travel to other countries to see how open we are in our criminal justice system.
I want to remind you of our phone number, 547-8726. If you sat on a jury here in the Tri-Cities, we'd like to hear about your experience and tell us a little bit about what you got out of it, if anything. So, a jury of your peers, I want to go back to Michael because you talked about obviously the population demographics in Franklin County are heavily Hispanic. So how do you ensure that you get Hispanic folks on juries?
Well, we don't know for sure if they're Hispanic or not just based on a name. For instance, my wife is Hispanic, but her last name's Killian, so you wouldn't know that she's Hispanic. So we don't actually look at the names. And a jury of one's peers is a jury of fellow citizens, not an ethnic group.
Oh, okay, so, all right.
That's the definition of that, so.
Well, we've got some callers here.
Okay.
Let's hear what some of their experiences. Hi, you're on the air with us today. Hi, Rick.
Mhm.
Have you done it before, Rick? Have you been called?
Hi, hi Rick.
Yeah. What was your case about? What was your case about? Oh, uh-huh.
Oh,
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be really interesting. Hey, thanks for your call today. I appreciate it. Yeah. Let's add another person to our conversation. You're on the air with us today. Hi. Yeah, good.
Very good.
So what was your experience, Bill?
mhm.
Oh, yeah. Trying to get in it. That's a really good point of view. So in the jury room itself, and you deliberated for a day and a half. Boy, that's got to be some intense human interaction there. Were there people that were trying to influence others? All right, Bill, thanks for your call today. I really appreciate that. So, because the two of you deal with this all the time, I'll ask you first, Michael, what would you do if you could, wave a magic wand and you got to do one thing to improve this process? What would it be?
I think there should be another way that we can get names from another state agency or agencies instead of just voter registration and driver's license and ID card holders, because that, I think, that's just a small segment. Not everybody drives, not everybody has an ID card, not everybody votes. So I think we're missing a lot of people in the state of Washington. So I think we should look at maybe DSHS or employment security, something like that, to get more names. Other states do that as well.
Oh, other states do?
Mhm.
Oh, interesting. Josie, what would you do?
To make the process better, if I'm looking at our aspect of it, just having people understand how important it is, and we don't mean to interrupt their lives, But just to get the understanding across that how very important it is, we can't have jury trials without our jurors. So they are such an important part of the criminal justice system, and I would like to see people take a little bit more ownership in that and not be afraid. Don't be afraid to serve on a jury, because some people are afraid even to walk into the Justice Center. So don't be afraid. Very few of us actually bite.
Right, well, it's kind of a scary place if you don't go to the
It
courthouse
is.
every day, you know, you
Yes.
walk into this big building, you know, you don't know where you're really going at that time. But I think I'd like to also say that being a prospective juror is a way for everybody to participate in our government. It's just another way that they can participate, so.
That's a good point. I want to end with one last thing, because money talks, you know that. How much do we pay jurors?
$10 a day.
And mileage.
$10 a day in mileage.
That
Yeah, that's
hasn't-
what my wife got. She was on a recent DUI case.
Okay.
She came out of it actually, and the rest of the jury, you know, she couldn't really talk about it much until it was over, and she didn't give me a lot of specifics, but she found it to be interesting because she goes, I can't believe the lengths that some people go to when they're a complete idiot.
Yeah.
And that was her actual, I mean, she said, this guy, we only debated for 45 minutes, and she said, this guy got torpedoed. Why did you take this to a trial? I mean, it
Yeah.
was one of those slam
Yeah.
dunks, but she found it to be interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank the two of you for taking some time out today, and I'm so glad that we finally were able to put together this interview
love the
today, because
excuses.
yeah, the excuses are very interesting, and I love whenever we can talk about civic duty. It just is, it's good stuff. Thank you,
Yes.
Josie Delvin and Michael Killian.
You're welcome,
for
thanks for
having
having
us.
us.
Yeah. We're back in a moment.